guys? Welcome back to my channel. This is going to be part 3 of my diet series going over carbs, so let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Quick recap of episode 1. The way you're going to figure out how many carbs you need is it's going to be the remaining amount of calories after you figure out how much protein and fat you are going to intake. The guidelines for both of those are going to be in their own separate videos, but I highly recommend you guys watch episode 1. It's going to give you the nuts and bolts of everything you need to know. All right, let's get into insulin and carbs and why it is so important. So in this picture, you see 2 of the best bodybuilders of all time. So on the left here, we have Lee Haney, who is one of the 2 gentlemen who have the honor of saying that they are 8-time Mr. Olympia champions. And on the right, you will see Dorian Yates, the guy who is credited with ushering in the era of the mass monster, which we see today in open bodybuilding. Now, obviously, there's a huge genetic variation here, and there's also a pretty big difference in the types of physiques that they were going for. But even though they're basically back-to-back champions of the Mr. Olympia, they had one major difference in their performance enhancement, and that was the inclusion of insulin, right? Dorian Yates was generally the person on top in the mid and late 90s. That is essentially when bodybuilders started using insulin, and that added a whole new dynamic to his drug regime, because insulin is one of the most anti-catabolic substances in the body. Catabolic meaning the breakdown of muscle tissue, and anabolic meaning the growth of muscle tissue. So insulin essentially minimizes how much regular breakdown your body will cause your muscles to go through. And this works through a variety of ways. But for our practical purposes, as I'm assuming the vast majority of everyone who is watching is natural, carbs are the only macronutrient that makes your body release insulin in a major way. And so what that means is that you have to combine carbs with other nutrients, because what happens when your body releases insulin is it shuttles several nutrients, not just blood sugar, into tissue, whichever tissue is preferentially selected. So in this case, we're hoping muscle tissue. And what that does is that with the shuttling of nutrients into your muscles, it helps your body to prevent from breaking down tissue and therefore increasing net muscle growth after each session. And it also helps to improve your energy levels. Let's get into the application here of when and what types of carbs we should be eating. The 2 functions of carbs that mean anything to those of you who are watching this as strength training enthusiasts: carbs release insulin, which we've already gone over, but the other thing they're useful for is providing energy for your body, right? It is the main source of energy for your body. There's a little bit of debate with that as far as the keto guys. Sometimes they will claim that you feel more energy when you are in a state of ketosis. Well, you might feel that way. It is straight up not true. If you ever tried to work out while you are 3 days clear of not eating any carbs versus after eating 200 grams of carbs in the last 6 hours, you will feel a major difference. The downside, though, is that if you have the unnecessary energy from carbs and the unnecessary insulin release from carbs, your body will preferentially select toward fat tissue, right? And you don't want that to grow. So you have to be careful about when you time your carb intake, because in the opposite direction, if you have carbs at the right time and with the right other nutrients at the same time, it actually is a major boost of muscular growth. So here are the best and worst times for the carb intake. Essentially, it's going to be related to insulin sensitivity. Now, you're going to be most sensitive to insulin whenever your body is lowest on energy stores, right? So you're thinking about when you first wake up in the morning, you haven't eaten anything for ideally about 8 hours, probably closer to 10 hours. And you're going to be very sensitive to insulin because you just haven't eaten anything, right? And then the rest of the times are going to be around the workout window, because even if you don't need it immediately before your workout, you're going to need it. So you want to make sure you're topped up. And then afterward, the insulin release is very strong after a workout, I should say. Your insulin release is very strong. And so what that means is that if you combine it with proteins and other nutrients, the release of insulin is extremely anti-catabolic, and it will help to move that protein, those building blocks, and all the things that stimulate mTOR, which is separate from the insulin growth pathways. They will all work synergistically to help maximize your muscle growth. Now, there are bad times to intake a lot of carbs. As I record this, I'm actually on a rest day, so this is going to be one of my lower carb days. I would not have carbs within an hour before bed, because a lot of foods that contain carbs have a high amount of fiber, So you will have to wake up in the middle of the night and go to the bathroom. You're also most resistant to insulin right before bed because you've been eating off and on all day. I wouldn't have super high quantities of carbs in back-to-back meals unless it's right, around your training window. Let's talk about how to increase your insulin sensitivity, because in general, being more sensitive to insulin is going to help all these processes just function that much better. So I give 3 suggestions here. That is, follow the advice on the last slide. So that's, best and worst times for carb intake. 2 is going to be to make sure you guys are doing your cardio. So when you do your cardio, what it does is it burns through a lot of those energy stores. And so it makes your body more and more sensitive to that insulin, right? Gives you a little more of a cheat code. Plus it burns off some of those calories and gets you in better shape. Do your cardio, guys. And then the last one is just to make sure that you get your vitamin D. There's a correlation between making sure you get direct sunlight and get your adequate amount of vitamin D and the lowering of A1C levels, which is a metric used in blood work to detect diabetes early. Diabetes is, in essence, type 2 diabetes is in essence a very, very high insulin resistance. So the lower you can get that A1C, the more likely you are to be insulin sensitive. I know that some of you might be thinking, hey, keto is this really well proven type of diet, where you eat no carbs or very, very, very little carbs. So your body's constantly in ketogenesis. Now, keto is really good for losing fat, but because you lack insulin to shuttle those nutrients into the muscle, you will end up looking like Evil Boo here, where you end up just losing weight in general. It is very, very hard to hold on to muscle if you're going completely ketogenic. Now, you can go very lower, like a much lower carb, and that is going to help you lose fat. But you do have to be careful with it, because if you shut off that insulin valve completely, it's very, very hard to hold on to muscle while you're losing weight. And this is going to be our last little section, guys. So we've got just a quick note on micronutrients. Please do not try to micromanage all of this unless you're someone who's genuinely in contention for a bodybuilding pro card, or you are someone who is possibly going to become a pro strongman or win a significant amount of money at a powerlifting meet. I would not stress about the micronutrients at all, guys. Just eat a variety of carb dense foods. So I gave some suggestions here. Potatoes, really, really good for potassium. Rice has just about everything. It's also super, super high calorie, and it has a little bit of protein to go with it. And then as far as the low calorie stuff, literally anything green. All right, thanks for watching, guys. I know this one took a while. I'm going to be trying to get back on schedule here so that I can get the channel up and running again. Tell me what you think about ketogenic diets in the comment section below. Laters.